before I even start, I wanted to put this question: what the difference between UX designers and product managers? And probably most of you are working with some product people, so probably I don't know the level of understanding or not what product management is all about. Maybe use me as one point of data for your research about, you're all UX designers or researchers. So what is a product manager and how do you create empathy to me? To throw out some ideas about what's the differences. Yes.
I would say the UX is a smaller subset of the product.
Okay.
You also have to make sure the product sells. You have to there's a whole lot of things when you do product management that are complex.
Okay, that's a good start. Anyone else? Yes?
Product managers, I find now, are more connected to the business.
More connected to the business?
The companies that are lessening their UX teams, product managers are taking those roles.
And they don't let you be connected to business?
They're more connected to the requirements, they're more of what's needed, so they're more powerful.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting, the word powerful. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah.
I think product managers tend to set the roadmap of features that are going to be focused on, and of course the UX who are helping to guide them.
Okay. Okay. These are good answers, and each one of them has some truth in there, and probably not the full truth, but these are good answers. Anyone else want to? Yeah. So maybe at the end of this, you will be able to quote some of the additional things over there. But before that, let me introduce myself. I'm originally from Israel. I moved to Toronto in 2002. So it's been a while. Before that, I was also in the States, in Michigan, for 6 years. So I actually lived longer in North America than I did in Israel. I started as a software developer in 1999 on this computer that, I don't know, some of you might know. So sorry, age you if you do. Those that don't know, it's probably age you as well if you don't know what they are. But in 2011, I moved to product management. So I was for over 20 years, I was developing software, doing a lot of digital development. I was lucky enough to be close to my clients. Most of my career, I worked for very small organizations, so the clients were right there. I was able to go to them, etc., etc. After that, I worked with some of the organizations. You might know some of them here in the city, and those on the right were some of my clients. If you can see from far over there. These days, I'm working for a few places. I'm teaching at the Schulich design thinking and information systems. I'm also working, I have a couple of podcasts. One of them is about the products that product people are using. But we actually, some of the products that we covered on the podcast were products that UX designers are using, because many product managers don't have UX designers or UX researchers. And therefore, we need to learn those products. So we covered A/B testings, and we covered experimentations, and we covered wireframing, and we covered many things that if we had the designers, we could have get their help to use them, but many times we don't. I also wrote a book, but it has nothing to do with this, it's fiction. But I did try to treat it also as a product. So these days, because I'm doing it for so long, I'm trying to treat almost everything as a product. Not always very successfully. But. Okay, before I even start, I wanted to get a bit of empathy to me with my experience with UX. So between 1989, and sorry for the small font, you probably can't read it from the back, but between 1989 to 2011, and all of these was my career as a developer and a CTO. I was a CTO of a startup here. It wasn't a thing. Either it just was not a thing, right? No one knew what UX design is, or I just didn't have anyone to do it. So I had two roles as a developer. I used all the components that I have from my software packages, and then the two roles were 7 plus minus. That's what I was taught. I was taught, like at my development course in 1989, use the 7 plus minus rule on your screen. So not more than 7 items, and around 7 is fine. And then I use patterns from other software that you know. So that's what we did. And that's really what I did for 20 years. Okay, so I had no real design in there. In 2011, in my first job as a product manager, and the company names were before, but here I don't mention the company names because I don't want to. They basically told me, work with other graphic designer from the marketing team. So my designer was a UI designer that designed marketing material. that was my designers. And whenever I need someone, I have to go to them and bring them to my team to help me with my designs, right? But then I convinced our head of product that I need to do some testing with some UX. So he gave me a small budget, and I hired on Elance, that these days is Upwork, someone from Detroit that was doing remote work for me. He was just a UX designer, not a UI, and he told me, I don't know how to design nicely, but I know how to design an experience. And he was doing the designs for me, and he did the test, and I followed everything, and he taught me everything I know, I think, to this day about UX design. But I'm not a UX designer. But I just had to do it because I had no one to help me. In 2014, I moved to another company that was up the street over here with two designers, but they were UI designers from printing, and they became UX designer overnight. They just added the /UX, and they became a UX designer. I had to teach them how to experiment from my experience before. They didn't know how to experiment, they had no idea. I had to teach them how to conduct interviews, how to even ask interviews when they experiment, how to collaborate online. There's a lot of stuff that I had to teach them, so there was nothing there as well. After that, 2018, I had one UX designer. He was a siloed. He liked to work on his own. And he was someone I talked with today. He mentioned Diva UX. I don't know if you ever heard that term, but they called him you had the Diva UX. And he basically wouldn't listen to anyone, which was very weird to me. And then when he was doing interviews with users, he would lead them through, and I could tell him what type of question not to ask because he would lead them through the process. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. 2019, I had two in the different companies. It's all different companies. One senior UI, one junior UX. So they were working very well together, but there was a HIPAA, and you probably all know what the HIPAA is, and they were listening to the HIPAA. So as much as they tried to do it properly, they're using user testing, they're using different tools, but they're very much listening to the HIPAA. Then they hired, the same company actually, hired a director, and he hired two junior that came with him from his previous job. And he, again, was very siloed, he didn't listen to anyone. And every time that I tried to bring up my own ideas, they were listening to me, taking it away, working on it for a week or two, coming back. And this drove me crazy because I just wanted to collaborate. I wanted to show them that I draw this on the meeting and then let's move on. So that was my experience. Okay. Since then, I'm working for multiple organizations, so I don't have that daily interaction on a team. But hopefully, that's not the product managers that work with you. That's not their experience, because you're the best. So I'm sure that there is much better experiences than I had. Okay, but there is still a lot of different experiences out there. Okay, so let me start with. I want to start with the 4 product risks. And when we talk about product risks, you might know these. I'm sure many of you already know everything that I'm going to show you today. But if you don't, hopefully there is something new. But this is coming from Marty Kagan, and he's our guru in product management. He wrote a few books. Inspired is the first one about what is product management. Empowered is the second one about what product teams are doing and product managers and how to manage a team in product. And it's not just the product, it's also the UX and the designers and the developers. And the third book he wrote is Transform, which is about transforming an organization to what is called the product model, product operating model. And he basically put together 4 different risks when we build products. And these are not project management risks. One thing that, if any of you will become a product manager in the future, you will hate when people call you project manager. And it's not about the resources, it's not about the budget or about the time. It's about the value. Is your value for our clients? And I'm sure this is the same thing that you guys are looking for. You're looking for value to your clients in whatever you are building. There is feasibility. Can we actually build it? Usability. Can the users actually use it? They understand how to use it. And the last one is viability. Can our organization sustain itself and cover their ROI? So in general, these are the 4 risks that he's talking about. Now, the next thing that he's talking about is also who actually owns each one of them in the organization. And that's where the industry is talking about the product team triad, the 3 roles on the team. And the 3 roles on the team are basically product design and engineering, where each one of them is responsible ownership to some of those risks. So the idea is that product own value and viability, so the value to the users and viability to the organization. Design is responsible for the usability, and engineering are responsible for the feasibility. Now, is that black and white, or there are no fuzzy lines over there? There are probably fuzzy lines. But the idea is that as a triad, these three roles has to be in the team. It doesn't matter if one person do all three of them, and a lot of startups, I'm talking a lot of startup founders, usually all of them wear all of these hats at the same time. Or you could have a designer that is also a product manager, or an engineer that is also a designer. As long as you have these three roles on the team, people know they wear this hat, and they can reduce those risks. Okay? So that's usually where I put these hats in there, because people really need to visualize it and understand. And usually in startups, when I'm doing this talk, I'm asking them who is wearing the product manager hat, because they will always have an engineer, and many times they will have designers because they will want it to be pretty, but they will not think so much about the product. So the idea of the product is to really find the value, the real value that users are, that we're creating for the users, for which they will pay us, for which they will come back, for which we can get product market fit. And make sure that it's not only valuable to them, but it's also valuable to us. That's why usually when I'm talking about MVPs, for example, I like to say it's a minimum valuable product, not viable product, because usually when you look at MVPs, you will start, and everyone know MVPs, what MVPs are, yeah? So the acronym is minimum viable products, but it's really value to the users. It's not so much value to us, because usually MVPs are not very valuable to us. We can't really make money out of MVPs. Usually they are not that great, they're scrappy. There is a lot of things that are not done in the product, they're not automated, so we have to do them as a service behind the scenes, manually, or stuff like that. So it's more valuable, it's more about the value to the users, and that's really the thing about MVP. By the way, if anyone has any questions in the middle, yes.
I'm jumping the gun, but where do US researchers finish the triad?
Okay, so here, so this is where we're talking, thank you for that question, because this is where we're talking about the triad, but we know that there is many positions in that triad as well. Engineers, usually it's not just an engineer, you will have an architect, an engineer, and usually you will have multiple engineers on a team. You will have QA, you will have a DevOps. So it's usually the triad is the lead on that, and many times it will be a team of a few people that will do it. Depends on the size of the project and the size of the team, etc. The same thing you will have with usability and with value. That's where a researcher will be there. So I put it as user researcher. So it could be UX research, it could be other type of research. But in general, there are several positions over there. It depends on the size of the organization, the size of the product, the size of the project, etc. But you will have also business analysts, data analysts. There is always quite a bit of people on a team, right? If it's just really 3 people, then those 3 people will have to worry about all of that, right? Or they will have to outsource it or whatever that is. Now, on top of that, you have also stakeholders. So this was just a team that is doing the work. And then the question is, on top of that, like, who do they have to talk with and what do they have to worry about in their work? Usually, that side of the circle, you will have like your clients and the users and the competition, so you will do researches about that. Here, you will have all the additional technology-related stuff, your DevOps, your IT, your CTO, which is your big stakeholder. On this side, you will have a lot of stuff going on, okay? So you will have lots of stakeholders, and who mentions before about the business? The business will tell us what we need to do, or you're closer to the business. And it's true that the product managers usually will be very close to the business. It doesn't mean to give them power. So the word powerful, they're more powerful. I would disagree with that, because many times it's a lot of responsibility without the authority. And one of the issues of product managers many times is you need to influence without authority. Because managing stakeholders, it's actually pretty hard. And this is a lot of the job is how to make everyone here happy. And each one of those people will have different needs, different points of views, different push and pulls that they will have to do. So if you think UX and products have tension between them, think again about all of those. Okay. Questions? Yes.
I don't have a question, but I'd say this. I like the quadrants, but I think it's blurry. There's things that overlap.
Yeah.
And I think that on the usability side, they're also talking to people like legal and
Yeah.
all that stuff too.
Yeah.
It's not compartmentalized.
You're right. But because no one is doing these definitions, sometimes there is no understanding about who does what. So sometimes it's better to start with that and then see what are the overlaps and who is better in doing what. And actually, what I want to go next into is the product development lifecycle that I like to usually show people. And usually I start with ideation. You have lots of ideas. You have ideas are coming from anywhere. Then there is a discovery to see which idea is actually going to work, which are not going to work. Based on that, we can strategize about what we're actually could build, or what is aligned with our values, what is not aligned with our vision, etc. We need to know how to prioritize, and prioritization is a whole thing in product management. Development is really just one part of that, where we know a lot of people would like to jump directly into development. And then we need to launch and go to market. And go to market, a lot of people are thinking about marketing, but it's not just marketing. There is a lot of things that we have to do around that. Then we have to monitor how it works and go back and do it in a cyclically lean way to build our product. So the triad, again, is really owning all of that. And that's where some of the fuzzy areas, because in the next slide, and I will share those slides with you, so I will go through them quite quickly now. But in the next slide, in each one of them, I will show some of the things that, what is it, and what you want to produce here, and who usually produce these things, or who usually own these things. Because ideas are coming from anyone. They will not come from just one place, and actually it's not a good thing that it's coming from one place. But then who actually make sure that we collect all of them and we put them in one place. If you don't have anyone doing it, sometimes you will take the ownership and say, okay, no one does it, I will do it. So you might have a parking lot of ideas that you manage for yourself or for your team or whatever it is. But this is something I usually recommend product managers to do, because they are in those interactions with all of those different players. So they are in a better position to actually have managed that thing. And it's just a management thing. The discovery, you know a lot about discovery and about the research that you're doing. And here, many times people forget about the value discovery. They go directly to the usability discovery. Value discovery is really important for product managers to understand that they have to do that, because otherwise they're not delivering the value of the product. And to partner with UX designers and with the developers sometimes to build something in order to find the value in what they're building. So here, you're probably also very familiar with this. And problem definition, personas, job to be done, hypotheses, test of those hypotheses, etc. I usually put these two hats over here, although many times the developers are part of that, or it's actually depends on the stage of your product, it goes to the developer. So we have an idea, we move it along the process, and then we develop maybe a test for that, we develop a prototype, whatever we develop for that. Strategize, always align with a company vision, company strategy, and then we want to create here a product vision and a product strategy, and what the success looks like. This is very much under the head of the product manager, and that's where product managers usually live most of their life in, understanding like vision and strategy and strategizing about where we're going based on all the information that they have. And all the information that they have is not necessarily coming from their heads, it's coming from the research that they do with the team. So the research that the UX designers help them to design, and UX testers, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe this goes to what you mentioned before about they make the decision and then the UX designer apply it. So maybe this is where those decisions, some of those decisions. But it's not all, because then they also need to prioritize, and there are many different ways to prioritize. And if you've been in prioritization processes, you might have, or try to put one together, you might have seen the challenge of how hard it can be sometimes. So just choosing the right one and building a roadmap for that. And these days we are looking usually at now, next, later roadmaps rather than time-based roadmaps or stuff like that. Usually I would put that also under the product manager. Now, you might have done some of it, or you might be doing some of it, either because no one else is doing them, or because you might be wearing both of those hats, and maybe you don't even know. Develop. So we have cycles here, and we want to, in the cycles, I'm sure that most of you are part of some, either a Scrum team or Agile team or whatever it is. So you have sprints and all that cool stuff that might be using okay or not, depends where you are. But you want to solve real problems, and you want to use a user-centric approach, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things involved in the development. And here, based on this page, you might want to develop different things. And that's where very early stages, we go with wireframes and prototypes so we can test things very quickly. Later on, we go into MVPs and versions that actually are scalable and sustainable, etc., etc. And this is definitely everyone. Many people rely on the engineers to do a lot of these things, but it's really the responsibility of a product person here is to make sure that the rest of the team understand the why behind things, why we're building, what is the vision, what is the strategy, because the ideas to build it, if you hear in a company that a product manager is bad because he didn't come with the right ideas, it's not him that is bad, it's the culture of the organization. The ideas are not coming just from product people, they're coming from everyone. And actually the engineers and designers have much better tools to come up with ideas that no one else has thought about, right? If they know what the real problem to solve is. Then when we launch, there is a lot of things to do over here, but just to mention a few things that are related to go-to-market, a lot of people just neglect, or they do it after the fact, or just at the end, the last moment. And this is like, how do we educate people about it? How do we educate internal people and external people? Who is responsible for that even to make this happen? I always told the teams where I was working with, I'm not a project manager. You assign a project manager to that, but we will create all the material that you need, the content that you need, the walkthroughs in the product, all of that, so people will be actually able to do that, including also how do we sell it, how do we support it, how do what the pricing models are, etc., etc. And usually part of these are the product managers, part of these are the designers. So it's I see it like a mutual, depends which area over here, but I usually put both of them. And then monitoring qualitative and quantitative information that you can actually find new ideas and be able to see, are we successful in what we're doing or not? What do we have to do differently, etc. So you might do it as in your UX designs and when you test and you iterate on them, but it's actually should be part and parcel of building a product. It doesn't really matter what stage it is. So it's always both. Now, you want to move to product. That was the title of the talk today. So I put here a few things. First of all, empathy to product. We know, I'm sure that's not new to you because as UX designers and UX researchers, empathy is the first thing that they teach you. It's cool. I do, or maybe not, I don't know, but at least they're talking about that. But empathy to product is another thing. It's the people that you're working with, right? Stakeholder relationships. So really stakeholders is one of those things that products and product managers do a lot, and they have to deal with a lot, understanding their stakeholders. Start getting to know them. Start to empathize with their needs. Because each one of them will pull and push in different direction, and they don't do it because they're mean, they do it because they have reasons, okay? So the job of each one will have their own job to be done. Learn to say no. This is the first thing we learn as product managers, to say no. It's very hard, okay? But it's really important. And there are ways to do it that will help. It will help you be a better product manager, that people will not start hating you because of that. But if you have a good definition of a vision and a strategy, and everyone is aligned with, that's where the stakeholders need to align with that. It's much easier discussion to say, this does not align with our strategy and vision. And if it doesn't align and we have to change something, what is going to be taken away? Do we change the vision and strategy, or do we do something else? But I learned it the hard way because I worked in places that we didn't have strategies, we didn't have vision. And people had them in their heads, and then the discussion is much harder. Ask why on everything. I'm sure you already do it as UX designers, but the why is really about the value. So we always why is the most important question that you can ask. what is the vision? What is the strategy? I talked about that already. Focus on the gaps in your knowledge. So that process with different areas, and I will share the slides. But I'm sure there is, again, if you want to move to product, I don't know if after this chat today you will, but it's not about, it's great. I love product. I can talk about it all day long. And every position is challenging. There is challenge everywhere, right? So if that's something, then look at the gaps and see what it is that you can learn. And I have a couple of books recommendations for you after. And then find a product mentor. Always a good advice for any position. But here I will try to align with a mentor that is aligned with empowered teams and the product triad, because there is a lot of good things and bad things, good stuff and not. There is I didn't talk about the bad stuff, but one of the bad things going out there is what is called feature factories. And the feature factory is basically where management are just throwing a list of features to the team and tell them you build that. Without knowing why, without understanding everything around it, they build it and then no one uses it. Okay? So the empower teams is the idea that we tell them the why and the team will come up with a solution. So it's an outcome driven. Now, one last thing I wanted to highlight, if you heard about product owners, a product manager is not a product owner. And actually, in my world, there should not be product owners. Okay, there should only be product managers. And the reason is because separating those roles is actually a bad thing for agility. It's a bad thing for getting the right product out there. You adding additional roles, and product owner is really what it is, someone that moves things from place A to place B, write some stories, and maybe organize some of the backlog. Okay?
It should be marketing.
Sorry?
It should be marketing.
Really?
No, the product owner should be marketing.
I don't know. I think that what happens with product ownership was a bad outcome of bad implementation of Scrum. Because imagine, and most of you know what Scrum is probably, have been in Scrum. Scrum has three roles. It has team member, it has a product owner, and it has a Scrum master. Now, team members, if all the developers on their job titles will be hired as team member, they will quit day one. They will not want to work as team member. I'm a developer. I want to really respect what I'm doing. My job title is not team member. My job title is product developer, engineer, QA designer, whatever it is. For some reason, product owners is a title. And it's not a title. It's a position. It's a role in a Scrum team. And it became this thing that it's a title. It's really what product managers, in the definition of Scrum, the product owner is really the users. And they should be part of the team, but most of us cannot get the user to be part of the team. So the product manager is the one that is a pseudo user owning that in the team. But that was bastardized by organizations over time. But enough about that. I already mentioned Martin Kagan books. So if you want to learn everything about product management, start with those two books. Inspired. This one, Aligned, is actually a great book. It's recently been published by Bruce McCarthy and Melissa Apple. And this is about stakeholder management for product leaders. So I wish I had this book when I was starting in product, because there is a lot of things you have to learn about how to deal with stakeholders and stuff like that. So this is really a great book, even for people that are not product, to learn about stakeholders. I also, on my podcast, I interviewed them, and Marty I interviewed for Transform, not for these two books, but this is an interesting discussion with them as well if you're interested. And my link tree with all my links, so feel free to connect with me and have any follow-up discussions or any questions about product management. And if you ever want to move into product management, I can be your mentor and just take it from there.